Welcome to the Construction Marketers Podcast, where we teach you how to create the best content from construction creators in the industry. I'm your host, Jonathan Core, and today we're going to be chatting with Matt Graves. Matt is a construction management professional for AGCM by day and a content creator for Construction Yeti by night. Welcome to the show, Matt.
What's up, Jonathan? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. So before we get into it, and I also want to share why I want to have you on the show, and obviously even the kind of kickoff for the podcast. You and I, obviously, we'll always talk about construction and marketing, but another topic that you and I talk about a lot is football. And so I just very briefly, just want to hear your take on what do you think the future is for the Texans next year and beyond.
Super Bowl or bust. Here we go.
There you go. You're going all in, and I think you guys have the recipe. I think you guys definitely have the coach. So I just figured I'd slide that in.
I haven't been this excited about that program in probably a decade. It's been a painful, and so I've been following them through the thick and thin. Yeah, it's been a painful decade, but I didn't know what to think with this new class coming in, but they were fun to watch. So
yeah, for
they
sure.
definitely achieved this year.
Yep, I'm pumped, and we got our head coach now and the former DC for the Ravens, so I'm stoked too. But yeah, so enough about football, even though we can probably have our own podcast about that anyways. The reason I brought Matt on is him and I have been connected for probably about a year, a little over a year now. Him and I have had different conversations through Zoom, and obviously we were recently on a live stream podcast. I think it was last week, and so in general, just knowing Matt both from afar and then now even knowing him more personally and even to kind of following his journey just on a daily basis. In my opinion, I think Matt is one of the top construction management professional, like the leaders in the space. I think it used to be just him. It continues to expand. There's more and more creators coming in the content creation standpoint, but I definitely think you've seen a lot. You've experienced a lot. You've trialed and errored a lot. I mentioned to you, I went through all your posts starting from 4 years ago, and to just see the evolution of Matt Graves and Construction Yeti, honestly, is super awesome and encouraging because the reality is like what people see now from a Matt Graves, like, engagement, all that sort of stuff, growth. It started like everybody does. There's not a lot of engagement, like his newsletter, although it's like 1,800 plus subscribers now, used to be zero. Like there used to be no. And so I definitely think you're going to add a lot of value to the conversation today, Matt. But to kick us off, I just want to unpack that a little bit more. I know that you and I have talked offline, and you shared how you started marketing. I think it was some sort of website. You were doing some SEO stuff. And so the first question is like, how did you get your start in marketing or content and all this sort of stuff? Where did that begin?
Well, I'll tell you, like 2 years ago, 4 years ago, when kind of this whole thing started, like I never thought I would be talking marketing. Like hell, a year ago, I Googled what copywriting is. Like I didn't even know what it was. Like, and I just, but I had this idea of like, there's not a lot of content out there for construction people, from construction people. You end up finding something, written by a marketing person, right? On somebody's blog. If you're trying to find something, you start reading, you're like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. They're not even from the industry, right? Somebody told me the other day that like construction people have a very good BS meter, right? They can sniff it out fast. And I was like, that's very true. And so I started constructionyeti.com in January of 2020. And that was what it was going to be. It was going to be a blog, and I was wanting to play the SEO game and just it was kind of twofold. One, I was wanting to learn SEO. Two, I was wanting to build a website. I never built a website before. And it was kind of I'm always experimenting and trying new things. So it was an opportunity for me to do that. And then but then that was the idea, is I'm just going to create content from a construction guy for construction people, right? And I made a Construction Yeti because like I kind of had imposter syndrome. I didn't really want my name on it at all. It was going to be kind of an anonymous type page, right? But that's where it all started in January 2020, and then COVID hit the world like 2 months later, and I lost interest in it. But that was the genesis of the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. So to kind of unpack that a little bit more, so obviously you wanted to kind of get in the SEO game and even to just see what it's like to build a website. What did you first start off posting? Like what, because I remember, I recall you saying that you were getting some, organic like reach and stuff like that. And so what were you doing and what was working from it?
I'd watched like a YouTube video or two, and they're talking about, the really long tail, keywords. Cause like if I'm not going to rank for construction management or something like that, right? Cause that's I don't have the authority for that. And so I was really looking for like those long tail keywords, like One article was about, why does construction start so early, right? And I had like 10 reasons why construction starts so early. Like why, they don't start at 8 o'clock, they start at 6 o'clock early, you know what I mean? And so those sort of things. And that's kind of what a lot of those first posts were about, was just trying to find little holes in the Google searches, answering questions that, weren't really answered very properly. And so if you make a Google search and then you end up on a Reddit forum and you're on Reddit trying to figure out what's right or wrong or anything like that. So I was trying to actually answer those sort of questions.
Awesome. Yeah. So the long tail strategies, see if you can you drive some visitors, all that sort of stuff, and just see that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, like you said, you pause and then eventually you started up again, but you started the newsletter. Before we get into the newsletter and kind of more the mechanics of growing, obviously starting and growing that, what's your take on the state of marketing in construction right now? Like whether it's just marketing companies that market themselves, marketers in the industry. Like what's your take on just the state of marketing in construction right now?
I think we probably had the same take here, and I want to hear your opinion after I give you mine. But I think it's very dry. Most construction marketers, they're posting their ribbon cutting photos. We were at this event, we were doing this, we shook this hand. It's very, very dry. They're not telling the story. They're not really showing what the culture. They may say these are our company values, and they, have 5 values on some sort of graphic, but they don't show you the culture. And I'm seeing marketing as two ways. One, it's like built, maybe three ways really. It's like brand building, it's leads for actually work, and it's talent acquisition. If, and the talent acquisition part may be the hardest part, especially in the coming decade. Is everyone knows the stats, however many billion people are retiring, or what I mean, whatever. It's getting harder and harder every day. So being able to get people, get quality people, to come and want to be a part of your team. So I think just the really storytelling aspect of stuff, and being able to. I mean, I think I've had a lot of success because I was able to experiment, and most people are just going by the playbook, and the playbook changes every other week, I think. So if you're not experimenting and playing with stuff, then nothing's going to be successful. I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with one. I like I said, I think it's super refreshing that a non-traditional marketer is sharing so much insight and perspective on like even those three buckets. You said brand awareness, you got lead gen, and you got recruitment. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
great way of bucketing it as far as what contractors are approaching from that standpoint. And so I agree with everything you said there. The thing I'll kind of tag on, or at least add from my end, is I think, in my opinion, I still think social media and content and marketing is a blue ocean. Like there's a book out there called Blue Ocean Strategies. Basically, it's how do you find your competitive edge within the market. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
it's weird that I'm saying this. Social media has been around since the early 2000s, and contractors are still kind of biting, resisting against marketing. But for those that one take advantage of social media, post consistently, but then I think the last piece is arguably the most important is create actually a really good content that people actually want to consume is a great way to like have a competitive edge within the market and honestly just lead the industry as it is. And I say this because I've been even creating my own content for social media. I have my own agency, and I'm trying. Honestly, the past 2 years has just honestly been gaining more awareness and building demand for social media and construction, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's been tough. Like I've initially when I started, very little engagement, but it's grown over time. And I'll get people who push back here and there, and I think that's totally fine. I think there are a lot of contractors who have grown their business without social media, but they have no idea the corner we're eventually we're gonna have to like cross, which is younger generations are on social media, and how are we gonna get in front of them as we address the labor shortage, all that sort of stuff. And so I still think it's a blue ocean strategy, like a blue ocean for contractors. It's just a matter of if whether they're like compelled or like motivated enough to actually begin to take the actual steps for it.
Oh man, I've said this before, but contractors are scared of the internet. They're scared of social media. I mean, there's some stuff to be scared about, right? You can't have all your guys out there taking pictures and posting them up there because your insurance guys are going to see it, and whatever. But just in general, they're just so scared of it. And if they could actually lean into it, and like I say, even they're scared of it. They're scared to post. Like companies are scared to post like a lot of outside the box stuff. Actual people, construction managers, like me or stuff like that, are scared of it. Man, if I had a nickel for every like person that's messaged me and said, I've been following all your content, I love what you're doing, and they asked me a question or something like that, but they've never liked anything. They never commented on anything. They're just like secretly watching from the shadows. Um, I get a message like that every other day. It feels like so.
Yeah, man, like those LinkedIn lurkers are real. And here's the PSA for you LinkedIn lurkers. Throw us a bone, give us a like every now and then, comment, maybe reshare if you feel bold enough. Give us something because it helps, like, at least I'm sure this is, yeah, I'm sure you can agree, Matt, but like it just helps to be able to know, okay, this is resonating, this is helpful, or maybe it's not, and maybe you don't like it because maybe some of it isn't helpful. But honestly, if I'm going to be transparent, most of my clients and contractors that reach out are exactly that archetype. They never liked, never commented, never reshared. But when I hop on a call, I literally ask them like, "Hey, so how'd you hear about me, or why are we on this call?" It's like, "Oh, well, I saw your content," and then I'll say, "Well, what post?" "Oh, this specific post about this." I'm like, I love it because it's like the content is resonating. I think sometimes
Mm-hmm.
contractors would be like, well, nobody's engaging, all this sort of, but as long as the right people are seeing this and seeing your content, that's what matters. And obviously, this helps me
Yeah.
with my business, but it definitely can help contractors, whether it's on the client side or even on the talent acquisition side.
Yeah, there's different strategies there, right? Like I was talking to somebody earlier that we were talking through stuff, and like a lot of stuff I'm posting is very broad. I'm tackling, or not, I'm not tackling. I want to put a spotlight on big issues, right? And like, let's talk about this issue. Let's talk about that issue. If you're a sort of a salesperson, right, you have more of a motive, right? You're trying to like find clients, that sort of thing. He was talking about, he may only get like 3 likes on a post or something like that, but he'll get a potential client DM him. And so he's like, where I'm like shooting a shotgun effect, right? Because I'm just talking to everybody and like, let's talk about these big issues. He's like a sniper, like really tactically like making these posts, and trying to talk specifically to a certain person. And obviously, like my post may get 100,000 impressions, and he may get 2,000 impressions. Um, and there's something to be said, I think, for like getting a lot of likes, and a lot of shares, and feeding the algorithm and reaching the masses, because it's at the end of the day, some of the stuff's a numbers game. But if you can really reach the right people, and kind of what he was doing too, he doesn't need a million clients. He needs like a few. So finding those few good clients through his stuff is perfect for him.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great that you're getting validation from other people doing this, and you don't have to have the biggest following to, maybe it's get new clients or get in front of the right people. It's just you got to get in front of the
Mm-hmm.
right people. I think is arguably the most important thing, and so I'm glad you said that. So now to be able to go into kind of more the Construction Yeti newsletter. So obviously you had your initial start during the pandemic, the SEO kind of website play, and then there's a
Mm-hmm.
pause. Eventually you ramp up, but you decide to go to the newsletter route. So if you don't mind me asking, like now, if I were to ask, okay, what is Construction Yeti and why did you start it?
So I started it. It was the continuation of the website. Really, like I had Google Analytics on the webpage, and I'd go look at it every now and then. And after a while, I mean, I'm sure when you start a website and you have no authority, like you have no traffic, and Google will kind of put you up there and test you on the homepage for certain keywords, and eventually you'll stick. And I was like, man, I've actually stuck on the webpage, like number one or number two in a couple of these, where I got the featured snippet or something like that, right? And so I started getting traffic, and this was without me touching it for like a year. It's just set for like a year, and I was like, man, I'm actually getting some good traffic on this thing, out of like 10 posts. It wasn't even much. I was
Mm.
like, I really need to pick this thing back up and kick it off again. Um, but I wanted to do it in more of an interactive community. And so my idea was like, okay, because I was the website, or the website and the blog was like, I'm just posting it and Google does what Google does, right?
Yep.
Um, and I'm just like praying to the Google gods that like they'll take favor of me. Um, so when I relaunched it in the newsletter format, because my idea was like, on Substack you can make a post, you can talk about the topics, and then you can be a comment section. So I was like, I want to like start the conversation, but I want this to be, I want a community to build around this. I want there to be a conversation. I want to like talk about something I learned this week, or like, something else. And so that was kind of the genesis of it. It didn't play out at that like that at all, because even I had a couple people that, like, when I announced I was doing it, I had a couple like old friends, like old college buddies and stuff, like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, I'm gonna go follow you. And I was like, here's the deal though. Like, I want conversation. Can you help get the conversation going? I had these little seeds planted, right? Like, get the conversation initiated. None of them even did it. Because I was like, what are your thoughts? Give me your thoughts in the comments. And even those guys I'd pre-talked to, and they were like, oh heck yeah, I'm all in this. They didn't even do it. Um,
Come on, friends.
it was. I was like, you guys suck. So what I found though was like I would take that article, I'd take that newsletter, right, and I'd go post it on LinkedIn, and I would say like, "Hey, I just wrote this article. Here's what it's about. Blah 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 blah. You know, what are your thoughts?" Or I wouldn't even say what are your thoughts. I mean, go subscribe if you want to. And then people started commenting there. They was like, "Oh, I love the meme this week," or "I love the whatever," and they'd start having a conversation there. And I was like, "Ah, that's where the community lives. I'm not going to pull the community over to the newsletter. I'm just going to go where they already live, and we'll have the conversation there."
Hearing kind of the inception story and now what it's evolved into is obviously super interesting because obviously the way you start something may not always be the way it normally isn't the way it ends. So it's cool to see
Mhm.
that evolution. So for those that actually one have never heard of you or even Construction Yeti, would you mind describing what's the content format or strategy? Like what do you put on there and what type of content do people expect? At least for those who may not know what's on there.
Depends when you listen to this podcast because it's constantly changing. I'm always experimenting. So what I'll tell you today, you're gonna look at it tomorrow and be like, "You liar! That's not what it shows." But this is what I'm doing today. It's a weekly newsletter. Um, it goes out every Saturday morning. I do my damnedest to not make it dry and boring. And like, there's always one meme at the bottom, and I'll insert little gifs here and there just to kind of crack it up and be fun. Because like my theory is like, no one wants to read another boring white paper, and especially on Saturday morning, nobody wants to read like what looks like a contract. If it's just a white screen of text. So I try to break it up. Um, I've really leaned into this, this year, the start of this year. I've been trying to figure out where I'm taking, what I'm doing, but kind of behind the theme of dragging the construction industry into the 21st century. Um, we talked about digital marketing and social media, but there's like so many things that the industry's behind the times on. And really, the ones that are going to win the next decade are the ones that are probably, in my opinion, the ones that are really going to lean into those things. So those are the topics I'm trying to write about. The digital marketing, social media, technology and tools, upskilling and mentorship. It's in this whole like just sink or swim attitude that we have in this
Yeah.
industry, like to actually help people, and then but doing all that sort of stuff people first. And that was kind of the pillars that I'm kind of working within in this next, I guess maybe this next year as I get into it. So,
Yeah.
um, so the whole Construction Yeti umbrella is the newsletter on Saturdays. We do CM Mentors podcast. We took a pause through the holidays and we're revamping that or relaunching that this week. And then I got some social media accounts. I started making a lot more meme videos and putting them on Instagram, and those things started blowing up. So then Instagram's account's blowing up. I take the best LinkedIn appropriate ones and put them on LinkedIn, and they seem to perform really well there. But I'm just throwing stuff at the wall and let's see what's sticking.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. Like there's definitely you're definitely like a scientist that likes to tinker and like experiment and see, okay, if we did this,
Mm-hmm.
what would happen, and if how does this react to this? And so I definitely think that there is an aspect in the industry, especially that needs that kind of ability because normally what happens, especially to what I've seen from like social media standpoint, is people will have like, this is our social media plan. This is exactly how every post looks. This is how it sounds, blah, blah. And it's stale. Like it becomes stale. Like maybe the first few times it's cool, but
Mm-hmm.
eventually you're like this is I know what I'm like I know that this XYZ construction is going to post this and I know exactly what it's going to sound like. And that's not what you want your audience to think because you want every post or piece of content you put out to be like, oh, this is actually interesting or something new. And so I definitely appreciate your like willingness to like experiment and tinker with the content.
You want to take it back to a Texans football analogy? Houston Texans. I don't remember what year it was. 2012, 2013. The final year with like they won the first two games, then lost the next 14 in a row to lose out. I'd be like sitting at my house drinking a beer on my couch, and I know what play they're about to call. They had like a pick six every game because I mean it was like that, right? They telegraphed it, and like so many construction people telegraph what they're doing. I don't, it's just I say telegraphing it, but you know what I mean. It's just like, man, we know what's coming. It's not exciting. I don't want to read this anymore. And then just people just scrolling, 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 scrolling. They're not stopping to even care about what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even too, like one of the things, like even to hearing how you structured the newsletter to be like, okay, I'm gonna add some gifts here. Find ways to break it up so it
Yeah.
isn't just like because I'm sure what is it 10 years ago if somebody said, hey, sign up for a company newsletter, all of us would be like, heck no, like I'm not signing up for that because I know exactly what I'm. It's gonna be a block of text. It's gonna be very corporate writing, and it's gonna be something I could have Googled and figured out on my own. It's not anything unique. So
It's going to be salesy, right? Like, I mean, I highlight people and I highlight products and I highlight stuff like that, but it's stuff that I've actually looked at and it's either something I use or if I've looked at and I'm like, hey, this is cool. Y'all should go check it out. Um, I haven't, there's no ad sponsorships yet. My goal was to hit 2,000 and maybe turn that on just to start driving some revenue so that it can grow a little bit better. Once you get revenue, you can start, feeding the machine a little bit better. Um, but yeah, no, it's not salesy. It's not a corporate newsletter by any means.
Yeah, for sure. So like obviously we just spoke to kind of like why you started it, its evolution, and even to just kind of the specific mechanics or like the strategy as far as how you're going about curating the content, putting it together, and obviously distributing it. I wanted to ask before we kind of go into your growth strategy for the newsletter. I wanted to ask what has the feedback and even the results been of the newsletter specifically?
I've got a lot of good feedback. Um, people message me on LinkedIn or send me an email. They're like, "Man, I've been reading your newsletters since day one, and like, I didn't even know you were following me because you never messaged me. You know what I mean? But man, I really appreciate what you're doing. This stuff's great. It's really helped me out. I get a lot of good feedback. I mean, and honestly, the subscriber base is because there would be a time when like I would sort of stalk people, like right if you log or if you subscribe with your domain, I go look up your domain and see who this person is, and then I try to see are they a senior executive or they entry level person or try to figure out who they are, right? Just trying to get a demographic. But if it's Jonathan Court Gmail, I can't go track that down. So um, so that sort of stuff. But um, it's been it's honestly been there's been times when I'm like, man, why am I doing this? Like, it's work, right? I mean, there'd be Friday night, like, because I had a really crazy week this week, right? And Friday night at 11 o'clock after my boys have gone to bed, I'm in there pecking away on my computer trying to get this thing out to go out Saturday morning. I'm like, I've had times I'm like, why am I even doing this whole thing? Like, this is silly. But then I'll get an email, right? Like, man, keep up what you're doing. I love it. Like, it's really helped me out in my career or whatever. So that's the stuff that's keeps me going.
This is exactly why you LinkedIn lurkers out there need to support, need to comment, need to subscribe, because to kind of literally say exactly what you just said, Matt. Like I go through the same thing. This is not to be a tangent sort of thing, but I was sick in like 3 weeks in December, and my plan, honestly, between like the week of Christmas and the week after, between Christmas and New Year's, I'm like,
Mhm.
clients are on vacation, they're off, like it's just super chill. I'm like, let me take advantage and like try to get ahead of content, get my leg, in front
Yep,
of the
yep.
other. And I got sick, and I was sick for 3 weeks, and that not only like basically like I think it was 2 days ago, I finally caught up to all the content and things I needed to do, and I was working evenings and weekends also. I'm like, it just threw me because I was just so. I'm not a good person when I'm sick. I'm not the smartest person because I'll take maybe a day, half a day off, and then what I ended up doing is I was sick, and then a week later, I'm like, "Oh, well, let me go on my run," and that made it worse. And so
Mhm.
that just delayed it, and so I just needed to rest, so I did that, but man, it just put me back, and literally, as, like, my wife is out there watching a show or wanting to hang out, I'm, like, in here, and I'm just like, "What? Why am I doing this?" Like, I don't and then I log into LinkedIn, some people like and then comment, send messages similar to the way you're saying, and like, "Hey, I thank you so much for what you're doing." I'm like, "This is why I'm doing this."
Yeah.
But in the moment, you're just like, you just kind of wanna hit your head against your table and be like, "What the heck am I doing?" So, one, this is a call to action for you LinkedIn lurkers out there, like, subscribe, comment, do anything you can to support so you keep people like me and Matt continually, like, reminded, "Hey, like, it's actually helpful in the industry." But then the other piece, though, is, yeah, I think it's just encouraging you, Matt, to be like, "Hey, man, just stay the course," because I know that there's moments like that where I'm like, I wish somebody could say that to me, and honestly, I just wait for the audience to do that. But no, I definitely think you've added a lot of value, and I think you even, honestly, in my opinion, I feel like you've only scratched the surface. I feel like what you're doing now is just barely scratching the surface. So I just want to encourage you too as you create content.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I've got a lot of ideas in my head. Just got to figure out how to execute them all.
Yep. No, it definitely can relate there. But yeah, so now going into like more of like and obviously I'm focusing specifically on the newsletter right now.
Mhm.
What's kind of been the path forward for like growth strategy? I know that you post about it on LinkedIn. Have there been any other things that you've tried to do to be able to get more subscribers and more exposure to it?
Yeah, I've built most of the current like almost 1,900 people. I've built most of that base from LinkedIn, posting on LinkedIn, building a community on LinkedIn, and kind of of following on LinkedIn and then taking them over, to the newsletter. When I first started, I was posting on Reddit, and then I just got tired of having to go in and defend myself on Reddit all the time because no matter what you did, it wasn't good enough for them. So I stopped that. I probably could jump back on there because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about using Reddit as a strategy to build a newsletter. I'm like, I could go do it again, but it's just anyway. So I've been posting a lot more on Instagram and build up. I mean, things got crazy on Instagram fast. Like I got up to like 21,000 followers in like 4 months. It's taken me like 2 years to get 9,000 on, not even 9,000, 8,800 on LinkedIn. So things popped up there fast with these meme videos and stuff like that. But then I felt like I was Ricky Bobby. Like I had them, but like I don't know what to do with my hands now, right? Like I'm just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. So I've been posting strategically, like in the stories. Like whenever I'll have a newsletter, I'll say, post in the stories like that, because I don't want to turn into a sales page, right? Like go subscribe every the post. So I'll just kind of go sprinkle into the stories. And I've gotten quite a bit of good, I don't want to say conversion because I'm not even selling, but I guess I am selling good conversion through that, right? And then I tried a referral program with rewards, but my rewards sucked, so no one signed up through that. But just trying to experiment different things like that. A lot of it's all been organic for the most part.
Yeah, that's great though. Like at least 1,900 subscribers, and obviously weekly readers on your newsletters. I think a good accomplishment, especially within an industry that's still kind of becoming aware of different channels like this. And it's crazy because like I feel like it's like in general, like there's this cycle of what was old is now new, and what's new is now
Mhm.
kind of old. And so I think newsletters, like if you heard, like I said, 10 years ago, people were like, oh, boring. Like, yeah, nothing to do with that. Now it's like there's a lot of newsletters kind of popping off left and right and just providing an avenue for more content.
I mean, I subscribed to actually, I went and subscribed to 3 of them today because they kept popping up. And I was like, I haven't looked at this thing forever. So I finally subscribed to them, but I've subscribed to a lot. There's a lot of really good stuff. Like I follow some AI newsletters and that sort of stuff to kind of keep you, because that stuff changes so fast. It's like, man, if you blink, you miss something and you're so far behind the times. But no, the whole newsletter thing is very interesting. I've been following Morning Brew for a long time. And if I could do a fraction of what they've done, like I consider myself super successful.
Yeah, for sure. No, the Morning Brew, I read that every day too. That's a good way. I have different news sources that I get, but that's the one I start with. So I definitely think that there's an avenue or platform, even from a news standpoint, like just curating news, even for construction. And I'm sure that's probably one
Mhm.
of the ideas you've had. But let me ask you this. So, like, before I kind of expand on, because I do want to kind of more on the newsletter standpoint, I do want to ask if you think there's still more room for people to create newsletters as well as some construction newsletters to follow. And even, too, maybe I can hear some more examples of newsletters that you subscribe to outside of construction for inspiration. But before we get there, I wanted to ask, because you mentioned Reddit. This is actually not a part of the agenda or schedule or line of questioning, but you mentioned Reddit. So I spent some times specifically on the construction kind of Reddit thread and to see what
Mhm.
people are posting, all that sort of stuff. It's typically like a lot of memes and really crazy stuff on there. But I'm curious, what was your approach on there from a newsletter standpoint? What's the community like there in general? And then I guess why did you leave more specifically? And I asked this because when I was researching, I spent a lot more time there a few months ago. I
Mhm.
actually saw Kyle Nitchins. He used to post his newsletter on there too. I remember
Maybe.
scrolling, I'm like, oh, there's Kyle. That's awesome. So yeah, I'm just curious what your experience has been like on there, and yeah, just what the audience is like and why you left.
I think it was. I mean, the audience is good. It's a great community. Like I kind of sort of left. I used to be on there a lot, and just without even in the agenda, just be on there reading it a lot. And I was kind of a Reddit lurker. I very rarely post or very rarely comment, but I'd be on there a lot. When I got more stuff going on now with actually writing newsletters and doing all this other content creation, I kind of ran out of time to spend just that time on there. But when I was trying to use it for sort of the newsletter promotion, the way that the community is, like, I mean, LinkedIn, people are promoting themselves all day every day. That's what LinkedIn's for, right? And so it doesn't feel as spammy if you're on LinkedIn, right? Like if every post you make is a quote sales post, or right, like go subscribe, people are just gonna tune you out, right? You have to give a
Yeah.
lot of value, you know build a community, and like once a week I'll say, hey, here's the newsletter for this week. Go subscribe if you like it, right? But that's what people are used to on that platform. People are not used to that on Reddit. Like, and they don't like it. They don't want to be sold to. They don't want self promotion. They don't want anything like that. Which you almost got to be part of the community, right? And actually post and engage and be a person that just also happens to do this other thing too, that you can sprinkle it in every now and then. I just never was able to take the time to probably build up that reputation on there. I posted I wanted to go delete it, but I didn't delete it. But made a post that, like, I basically just copy pasted my LinkedIn post, right, in like kind of quote LinkedIn copywriting format, right, because that's different than most places. And I basically just copy pasted it over there, and just to see what happened, and like no engagement. One person was like, "This is the most poorly written thing I've ever read in my life," and I was just like, I wanted to delete it, but I just left it. And anyway, so that's been my last post on Reddit like 2 weeks ago.
Nice, man. No, that's one. I'm glad you say that. Like you just, you didn't no engagement and like somebody even roasted you. Honestly, I feel like in general, because I talked to somebody recently, I remember who it was. They're like, if they have a post that flops, they'll delete it, whatever. My thing is, honestly, I'll leave my fall flat ones up, just not so much to, because other people will read it. Honestly, it's for my own ego to put myself in check, saying, "Hey, Jonathan, you're not the smartest guy always. Your ideas aren't always the greatest. Your head's a little too big, so we need to deflate it." So I think for me, honestly, like I'm sure that may be a different reason why you did it, left it up. But I know sometimes I don't. I have posts that flop, and I'm like, I'm gonna keep it up there because it's good for me to have my pride in check. Because it's easy for me to be like, "Oh, everybody loves what I post" and all that sort of stuff all the time.
For me, like I don't really care if it flops. Like, it's not really an ego thing. Um, it was more, I was going to go delete it because I didn't want somebody to come across it and see my account on this spammy looking sales thing and this thing like, oh, this guy's just like a spammer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I didn't want that to be on my Reddit history or whatever they call it.
Yep.
That's why I'm gonna go delete it when we get off here.
That's smart. That way hopefully, yeah, you do it because maybe some of these LinkedIn lurkers will decide to stop lurking on Reddit and will just be like, "Oh, hey," they say something too. So who knows? But I
Yeah.
think that's no, and so maybe that honestly speaks to more my pridefulness or ego that comes through, and I'm just like, Jonathan, it's good for you to keep this up to know that hey, everything you post isn't going to be gold, and that's okay. But yeah, no. And the other thing I was going to say, I think there was a nugget in what you said about Reddit. So you said LinkedIn, it's okay to share here and there, some salesy type content, and then
Mhm.
but if you do that all the time, then people are just going to zone you out, and I agree with that 100%. But then you said on Reddit, it's very different. It's very community based. But not only that, you want to add value. You want to just like be able to add something that contributes to the community, either makes them entertained, laugh,
Yeah.
educates them, helps them out, inspires them. All these like you want to do approach to that. And so the nugget of wisdom I think that's in that is you should approach all your content with that mind frame. Is you're trying to build community, you want to add value, you want to entertain, you want to
Yeah.
inspire, you want to motivate, you want to educate. The less you sell on, and I say this all the time, the less you sell on social media, the less you repel. But the more you sell, the more you're going to push people away, whether it's on LinkedIn or Reddit or any other social media platform. So I just want to, I guess, highlight that piece because I think there's a lot of wisdom. It's like, hey, when you approach social media, your mindset should be approach it like you are posting on Reddit.
And that's kind of been my strategy on Instagram too. How have I grown it? Because like I don't really post a lot of like the newsletter stuff in my feed, I guess it's called. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing, Jonathan. I'm figuring all this out as I go. It's called the feed, right? I don't post a lot of that. I'll post the memes and all that sort of stuff to draw attention. Just to be a part of the fun community and stuff like that. But then I'll just kind of like slip one into the stories every now and then, right? A little soft sell here and there, but it's not in your face. And I think that's why I had success on LinkedIn as well because I wasn't just selling something, right? I mean, I was sort of selling a newsletter, right? And I had like on my profile, on my link, and all that sort of stuff. But I was really there to like make connections and connect with people and have conversation and that sort of stuff. So um, I wasn't just a salesman.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a good mindset and mind frame to go in when it comes to creating content. But back to the newsletter aspect, and I know we're kind of unpacking and kind of deconstructing what you're doing there. Let me ask you this: do you think there's a space for more people to create construction newsletters, kind of part one and part two? If so, what kinds of newsletters do you think there's opportunities for other people in the industry?
I think there probably is, but I'll say that with a caveat that it depends what your purpose is, right? If you're trying to be that corporate sales, I think we talked about this on that live stream we did with Chad and Stacy. If you're a company and you're wanting to make a company newsletter and it's a very if it's sales, right? Like, look at our project, look at our people, we promoted so and so. Like, no one cares. Probably your own company probably cares half, right? Like, no one cares about that. But if you're actually going to create something valuable that helps the industry, that educates them, entertains them, it's just another medium like anything else. So I think there is purpose. I think there is more room for that. Um, I think, like, I've seen people try to do what I've done with the memes, and, like, I mean, not to pat myself on the back, like, but they're not good. And I've seen, like, a lot of people try to copycat what I've done, and, like, it falls flat. I'm like, no, you got to find what's good, works for you, right? Don't just copy what everybody else is doing. Like, if somebody that went and tried to do exactly the same newsletter I'm doing and redid it, it probably won't work for them. And
Yeah.
because it's not them, it's not their voice, it's not their style, it's not original. But I think if you do find something original and you have a purpose of educating and helping and entertaining, I think there's a lot of opportunity. So,
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to preface it and kind of, yeah, just even going back to mindset is like having that approach is like before you even say, hey, should I start a newsletter? The question should be, hey, what value can I add within the market, and what
mhm,
channel, it could be newsletter, could be podcast, could be social media, could be all these
right.
things, can I use to be able to distribute this valuable, helpful content from that
Mhm.
standpoint. So now, as far as like construction newsletters, what are some construction newsletters outside of Construction Yeti that you would recommend to follow or to check out?
You mentioned Colin Nitchin. He does a really awesome one. The influential project manager on Substack. Um, Man, there's been like three times he's like stolen my thunder because I'll have like an idea for something like that I want to do. And one was like, it was intro to MEP, right? Mechanical electrical plumbing. And I was like, man, it's something that's so misunderstood. Like, most people on the peripheral of construction, even people getting into construction, they don't really understand the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. And so that was on my hit list of what I was going to do. And then I woke up one morning and he had done like the perfect guide to MEP. And I was just like, dude, I can't even beat that. So, like, I just like linked to his in mine. I was like, here, go check out Kyle. He did a really good job. So he does a killer job on stuff. Um, Matt Verderamo, he does a really good job. I think it's called Building Balance in his name of it, but it's all about mindfulness and stuff, and how not to. He does a lot of good content on LinkedIn about that as well. But just being a good kind of construction professional, managing burnout and all those sort of things. Um, I'm leaving somebody out, I know, but those are a couple that popped in my head.
The one newsletter I will add, and I'm sure like I know you've connected with him. I've connected with him is Brogan from last week in ConTech.
As soon as you said the one more, that one popped in my head too, because I love what he's doing. Like I told you, I knew I was forgetting somebody, and I'm trying to get him to write more stuff on my newsletter because he does a really good job.
Oh yeah.
Um, but no, he does a heck of a job. He said he reads like 600 emails a week of like just different. Because when I first popped up, he actually on Substack you can kind of promote other people or recommend other people like on your page. So he started recommending my newsletter. I didn't know who he was, and I went and like looked at it, and I was like, "What is this thing? Like some robot? It's like almost like an RSS feed or something, right? Like, how those would just be like news article and stuff." But I was like, "But it's not just that. It's like there's a little bit of commentary, but he says like no hype, no fluff, and like it is no hype, no fluff. It gets to the point. He does a hell of a job. And the first time, like I think I reached out to him for like a Zoom call or something, and I was like, dude, how are you doing this? Like, you got a robot doing all this, or like some AI? He's like, no, man, I'm doing it all myself. And I was like, you're an animal. Like, you're wild, because he does a hell of a job.
Oh yeah. No, I can remember a few months ago I talked to Brogan. He reached out wanting to connect, and once he kind of shared that too, like I honestly like I'm like, well, one, I'm gonna say Brogan is an RSS feed. Like
He
he's
is.
a human RSS feed, so he's great at curating all that sort of stuff. But yeah, no, I think he's done he's found himself a pocket within there. So I would definitely recommend that people go support him. He's and he's super humble. Not trying to be like I know that I've kind of give him some tips on content, all that sort of stuff, and I'm just like, go support him, go check out his newsletter, and yeah, check out his content too. And I'm just like, honestly, I feel like, and I'm curious, maybe even too, maybe we can go a little bit on this. Is I feel like newsletters, podcasts, could be blogs. Like these are even long form video. Like I feel like these could be, in my opinion, like kind of the foundation for repurposing micro content. And that's one of the things I told Brogan is like, hey, you should begin to like kind of unpack some of these in more depth and just allow for that to be kind of a subscriber generation. New subscribers into your newsletter. But I'm curious, have you approached that yourself too, kind of repurposing some of the content, maybe more micro, to be able to drive it to subscribers?
A little bit. Sometimes I'll do that where I'll take like little snippets of the newsletter and use that as kind of like a teaser, right? To like, say, hey, go do, over here. I've also found the inverse too, where like I'll be having a conversation on LinkedIn or something like that. Or maybe I'll leave a comment on somebody else's, I'll leave like a 3 sentence comment or 2 sentence comment, but like in my mind, I'm like, holy crap, this is a good topic and I can expand on this into something. So I actually get a lot of my newsletter content from short form. And then, because sometimes it's hard, right? If you sit down, say, Jonathan, sit down and be creative right now. Come up with good ideas. You're like, I don't even know where to start. Like ask ChatGPT and like, I don't even know where to start. But if like if there's a prompt, if you're on somebody else's, you're scrolling through LinkedIn and, leaving comments on other people's stuff is sort of a prompt, right? They've already started a conversation and you can add, if you've got, some insights on there, it's easier to do. So not only could you even use that as a prompt to start your own LinkedIn post or like a more long form, like an article or something like that. So I've seen it kind of go both ways, from short form to long form back to short form. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I definitely have, like, even some of the videos I've created for construction marketers have started from like one post, and I'm like, okay, let me expand on this more because it seemed like maybe some people resonated with this. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that could even be like a good strategy to test content. But even for me, like, I definitely have a lot of ways that I get ideas, and honestly, like, I'm constantly, so I have like so all these will eventually be a post, and so I'm literally just constantly in conversations, sales calls, client calls, industry networking calls,
Mm-hmm.
these types of podcasts, those sort of things. I think there's so much inspiration for so much content. It's just, you just have to kind of be aware of where to kind of, because in general, I feel like a good rule of thumb is if you have I have an interesting take on that topic, as I know that you have your own, like, on specifically on ConTech. We'll see if we can get to that, but like I know that, like, if I say that, Matt Graves right away knows exactly what he wants to say, or even to in-house marketers, you have your own hot take on that. So I think anytime we have some sort of opinion, I think that's a good way to be like, oh, let me jot this down and table it for now, so I create it. Boom,
I've got the same running list of stuff,
boom. There you go.
and
So we both have the list.
it's like it's the same thing because like I may be driving or something, or like in the shower or something. I get an idea, like you start
Yep.
thinking through stuff, and like man, if I don't jot it down, so like I just go punch in my notes app on my phone, and then I capture the the essence of what I'm saying, and then I can go expand on it later. But you got to be ready when inspiration strikes because it's so hard to be like sit down, be inspired. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's do something really quick. Now that you show me your notes there, I'm gonna share with you one idea that I have on a post coming up, and then maybe you can share one, at least a teaser, and just to get an idea as far as what how you should approach this. So I'll kind of share what one that I have here. So I got off of a call with a general contractor out of Boston, and he mentioned he had been working with an agency that isn't specific, a marketing agency that isn't specific to construction, and so they're kind of running into a lot of different walls that they're facing. And actually got off the call here actually an hour or so ago with him, and I literally had, like, I have a post here that says, and I don't know just yet what it's going to look like, but it's, don't settle for any marketing agency, get a construction specific agency. And obviously, this isn't going to be a post about pitching myself or saying, hey, work with me. It's just try to find, especially when it comes to marketing, whether it's a website or social media or maybe even podcasts, like, try to get somebody specifically in the industry, because it's a very, like, even though it's B2B, like specifically commercial, it still has its own nuances and it's still very different. It's its own animal. So that's a future post. We'll see. Maybe when I actually look at it again and read it again, maybe in a few days, because I always do that. I'll read it again, be like,
Hmm.
I don't like that, and I'll scrap it. But that's at least an idea for a post. So now it's your turn, Matt. I'll leave it up to you. What's an idea that you have for content coming up?
So I'll give you a meme video I'm going to make. And so the little Beetlejuice guy,
Yep.
that just hanging around, that clip.
Yep.
So I want to use that one, and basically the text is going to be when the crew finishes the daily production task 2 hours before quitting time, and there's quote not enough time to start something new. Like, just hanging around. So
Perfect. Luckily, this podcast will go live, I think, sometime in March,
oh,
beginning of March. So you have some time. So I'm
I
just
got a
saying this
month
because
to
I
bang it
know.
out.
Well, I'm saying this because I know that you mentioned that there's some people who may copy kind of your format or strategy. So at least, hopefully, by the time this goes live, it'll be live at least.
I've
Um,
got I've got I've got a bunch of random topics and different notes, but then I have one that's video ideas, and like it's
mm,
just I've probably got 30. Well, half of them I've already made. I need to go delete them. But anyway, it's just you got to catch it, man. Like,
yep.
whenever you get an idea, you got to catch it. And if you don't catch it, you forget about it.
Yeah, for sure. So, before we hop off the newsletter side, I know that there's a lot more things I actually wanted to talk on today, but like we said, maybe we're likely going to do a part two. That way, we can unpack specifically more things along the lines of like even what you've seen from the podcast that you've built, and just even that I know that initially you started off by yourself, and now you have Kyle as a
Mhm.
guest, as a co-host, and then even to more the personal brand play and even LinkedIn content, gym trainer. So we'll likely do a part two to be able to discuss those a little bit more in detail. But kind of ending the topic on newsletters, what are some non-construction related newsletters that you would recommend people following, or even two that you follow outside of Morning Brew?
Morning Brew's a good one. They've got a whole series of stuff. I don't think I subscribe to any of those other than Morning Brew. Um, Going through my stuff right now. There's one called TLDR AI. They're pretty good. They have a bunch of AI news. It's almost like Broggins. It's like not a lot of
Mm,
fluff, not a lot of commentary. It's like an
yeah.
article and then like a little piece. There's one. It's called because I've kind of gone down this AI rabbit hole as well. I want to say it's called "You Should Build a" or "You Should Build a Robot" or "You Should Have a Robot."
Okay.
I'm trying to find it right now.
Are you subscribed to like things like Justin Welsh and things like that, like those other creators?
I was subscribed to Justin Wells for a long time, and then I think I've unsubscribed because I haven't just it kind of gets when you start repurposing. I mean, he's kind of got one gimmick of sorts, and so it kind of like I got it. I got the knowledge.
Yep.
Um, so I
Yeah,
like
that's
I like Alex Hormozi doesn't do a newsletter necessarily, but I subscribe to a lot of his stuff. And talking about taking short form content and making it long form. That's kind of what his strategy is. He
mhm.
posts like crazy on Twitter, and any idea pops in his head, it doesn't go into his notes app. It goes onto Twitter, and if people like it, then he turns it into something.
Yep.
He tests it with his that is his notes app. So anyway,
Yeah, and it helps to have like distribution channel like he does. Like he has obviously
mhm.
tons of followers, but yeah, no, I heard that he tests his on there, and even too like they have like different structure for video, like long form videos, and then even too they record shorts specific. Like I think he'll sit down and record like 20 or 30 shorts as well. So some of it isn't even like chopped up from a some sort of longer form clip, and so their contents are. I think he's. I heard it. I listened to him on a podcast the other day. He spends probably $80,000
A month, I think.
a month. And but he
Yeah.
said, but people are like, "Whoa, you spend that much?" But he basically says, considering how many views he gets, I think it's 200 plus million. He said that if you were to equate that to how much you would have to pay like a Facebook or a Google or ad revenue, he said it would probably be around 1.2, 1.3 million a month that he would have to do. So it's like, okay, that's in context. Now you're like, okay, you realize that. In my opinion, I'm huge on social media organic, and for that same reason, because you own the audience. Obviously,
Mhm.
you do want to, if you want to truly own it, you want to go email. But even within a social media standpoint, like it's a huge leverage.
Well, shoot, he's coming off better if he's spending 80,000 a month and not having to pay the Facebook and Google ads. But hell, he's probably making money through ad revenue shares on YouTube. So I don't know how much money he makes monthly, but he's probably getting a big chunk of that money back because he's huge on YouTube. So
Oh yeah, and even too hearing because he's honestly I've been studying different creators. He's one I studied for a little bit, and I realized in one of the podcasts he had mentioned he was saying how like well, his big approach is obviously he wants to build his own distribution channel because he wants to be able to own it, and anytime he just
mhm,
pump anything out, great. But honestly, like I like the way he would start his videos. He used to do this. He used to be like, "Hello, I'm Alex Hormozi. I'm the founder of Acquisition.com, and I'm not here to sell you anything." And then he'd go
agree.
into the whatever the value is. And I think in general that strategy is makes a lot of sense. And even too, I read his book was it $1 Million Offers? I'm going through the process of reading his second book, $1 Million Leads, or sorry,
Mhm.
$100 Million Leads, and he literally talks about how he's playing the long game. He's like it basically he's like most of you probably can't afford to work, or like you're not at a level where you can work with you, so he's trying to help as many people as he can to get to that stage, so eventually he can buy a part of their business and be able to scale and grow it. And so for me, I think that's a long term play. And he even mentioned with
Yeah.
his launch of his new book, he was like he literally was like, I could have made, I think it was like $50 million at the launch for his book, but instead, like he literally built this whole thing up the same way like sales funnel, like they're like value adding. Hey, with this course you get this and this and
Yeah.
this and this and this, and then normally you hear somebody say, hey, this costs like $50,000 if you get it, but for today you're gonna get it for 59 or sorry 599 or something like that, or whatever their markdown price is. And so he built this up, and he said, it would make sense for me to charge this, but if I were to reduce it, it'd be like 10K, and then he went to 1K, and he said, actually, you know what? This whole thing is completely free, and people were just like, oh my gosh. And so I think honestly, Alex Hormozi is a great example of playing the long game as it relates to the content and all sorts of stuff. And I think the more and more you do that, I think the more and more you're gonna win in the backside of building an audience.
I agree. I agree 100%. You get on there if you get on a social media purely to sell, like you gotta be a part of the community. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a social networking, right? And if you're
Yep.
actually networking and you're just a sales guy, like I mean, I've got to where I don't accept anybody's request that doesn't have a content if they're like if they have insurance or bookkeeping or something like that, right? Because it's like I know all you're gonna do is like sell me on services. And I don't need your services, like so.
Yeah, for sure. So cool. So let me just ask you this last question before we close out today, Matt. This is going to be we're basically gonna I'm gonna ask one question. It's we're gonna hear your hot take or your rant on it, and then I'm not gonna go back and forth. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna let that just like cliffhanger hang, and then that way people can tune in next time, so that way we continue the conversation. But specifically around ConTech, this is just gonna be one specific question as far as ConTech. What are your thoughts on ConTech and how they approach marketing to contractors?
Oh man, I could. Yeah, we're gonna need a part two and part three for this conversation.
Yep.
Um,
Give us the
they
sizzle.
have
Don't give it to us all, but just leave us with a cliffhanger enough that's like, oh man, like I can't wait for this part two.
for one, they're generating products, creating products that the industry doesn't want, and two, they don't know how to talk to the industry.
Woo, man. And okay, so yeah, we'll leave it there. We're gonna expand on that in the future. Yeah, and for our contact friends out there, because I have contact friends, I'm sure you do too. And
Oh, I
obviously,
do too.
there's no hate from that standpoint. I think there's definitely a dialogue that needs to be had and be able to help. Hey, here's a better way. And I've talked to different founders myself, and I'm like, I definitely think there's a room for those 2 points that you just said. So yeah, so we'll
And
leave
I'll
it at
just
that.
so
Sorry,
I
go
don't
ahead.
make my contact friends mad. So don't make my contact friends mad. 99% of those people are making products that the industry doesn't want, but the ones that are doing well are going to do very very well. So
Oh yeah, for sure. But we'll wait to unpack on that a little bit more. Yeah, hopefully you contact friends. You'll still be friends with us. Hopefully this doesn't, we're just starting the conversation, but the goal is to be able to help and bring more insight from different perspectives. But thanks again, Matt, for coming on the podcast, the first pod for construction marketers. And for those of you listening, this is basically the format I'm going to take. I'm going to be bring on a different creator within the construction industry, and even to other people who focus maybe on social or maybe podcasting or different people in the industry, just to share and honestly share tips and strategies, and really just talk shop about marketing in construction. Because I agree, Matt. There's not a lot of this happening. There's no format for this, and so hopefully as we build this out, we'll be able to create honestly some of the most interesting content in the industry and be able to honestly share, bring new followers to you and the Substack and your LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff, and just be able to grow all of us, just all of us just grow at once. But yeah, once again, thanks for coming on. I do want to leave just a chance for you to plug anything you want to plug for you or Construction Yeti.
Man, I think what you're doing is awesome. I appreciate you having me on. No, I mean, if you think what you heard and you like newsletters that aren't boring and with memes and gifs, and hopefully maybe you'll learn something along the way, go check out constructionyeti.substack.com. That's where the newsletter lives, the Construction Curiosities weekly newsletter, and CM Mentors podcast all lives right there. So
sick. Yeah, man. And we're definitely going to have you on for part 2, which we'll be covering more CM Mentors podcast, your thoughts on personal brand, the LinkedIn content, gym training. Basically, you're coaching people and kind of helping them hold themselves accountable to content, and even to the side for ConTech. There's definitely still a lot of topics we can cover, and I'm sure there's probably going to be more between now and then. But thanks again for coming on the podcast, and yeah, we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later.